Zeller smiled. I will convince him. I'm very good at this. Matthew thought for a moment and threw out two more questions. If I become the advisor of the Lord's manor, what do I need to do? How much is the reward? Zeller's invitation was obviously not a spur of the moment. After hearing Matthew's words, he said without hesitation. Usually nothing. When an incident occurs, you only need to provide related knowledge and assistance. As you can see, I am only a warlock. My understanding of magic is far inferior to that of mages. Rolling Stone Town has always been lacking a formal magic consultant, and I think you're the perfect candidate. As for the remuneration, it will not be less than 200 gold coins per month for the first year. We will reevaluate it based on your contributions in the past year, but the remuneration will only increase and not decrease. If the intensity of the work was as easy as what he said, then the pay was quite generous. However, Matthew did not agree immediately. He only nodded. I will consider it carefully. That should be the case. However, I still hope to have the opportunity to continue working with you. Zeller smiled and snapped his fingers. In the mirror, Lesna timidly looked at the two of them while leaning against her glasses. Charge this staff. Zeller handed the item over. Lesna took the staff, and her face blushed. Okay, please wait a moment. After a while, her fiery figure appeared in the mirror again, but the flush on her face was even more obvious. Here. Matthew took the cough staff and was delighted to find that the staff had become charged and could be used at any time. The only strange thing was, when Matthew first took the staff, it felt a little wet and warm. Thank you. He didn't ask how the succubus charged the staff. After chatting with Zeller for a while more, Matthew got up and left the Lord's mansion. It was the afternoon, and there was still a commotion outside. Matthew brought Soldier around the town for a whole afternoon. After experiencing the rare festive atmosphere, he hurried back to the oak forest. At dusk, Matthew's busy figure once again appeared near the pit in the northern wasteland. He had no choice. No matter how late it was, he had to make up for the work he missed during the day. There were only 4 days left until the temporary state of double harvest ended. In the next 4 days, nothing could stop Matthew from planting trees with all his might. Night fell. In an abandoned mine northeast of Rolling Stone Town, the sparkles of torches illuminated the dark and damp mine pit. Shadows of different heights and sizes swayed along with the light. These shadows reflected on the rock walls of the pit, looking exceptionally ferocious. The rustling sounds of discussion and the increasingly loud quarrels echoed in the cave for a long time. Ronan can't be here. A dull voice instantly drowned out the other noises. It was a young man with a greasy face and a torch in his right hand. He was wearing a grayish-brown robe, and his entire body was enveloped in a faint black light, which added a hint of evil to him. I swear in the name of my lord that Ronan's true body is definitely trapped in the astral plane. This is a fact that has been verified by many parties. The man's eyes looked around fiercely. His eyes were filled with undisguised malice, and those who were stared at by him would involuntarily have their hair stand on end. However, there were also people who were not afraid of him. A slender black panther walked out gracefully. Her voice was hoarse and magnetic, and it instantly attracted the attention of all the male creatures present. But we all saw Ronan with our own eyes. Anderson, before the evil god behind you shows his true sincerity, everyone will only believe their own eyes. Anderson glared at Black Panther with an unfriendly gaze. You'd better use the right words, Quina. My lord is not an evil god. He has lived in the heavenly palace for a long time and was once the ruler of this land. Quina sneered. Every evil art master firmly believes that their master is the true god of the heavenly palace. You'd better show us something practical. In order to cooperate with your damn ritual, we've already lost the initiative. Rolling Stone Town has strengthened its defenses, and everyone is now in a passive position. What you should do now is, to be honest, and not continue to hide. This is not beneficial to our cooperation. As soon as she said this, she immediately received a lot of resonance. In the shadows, Leon from the Silver Frost Brotherhood took a step forward. Madam Quina is not wrong. The declaration of war was your order's suggestion. We've already cooperated with you and done a lot of work. Now that our brothers have infiltrated the town, but we've discovered that Ronan might still be in town. Legendary mages are no joke. I also heard that the Lord of Rolling Stone Town has sent people to seek the support of a legendary monk. I'm afraid none of us wants to face such a threat. The others also agreed. The people of the 3 major organizations were not united. They were incited by Anderson, the Southern Patriarch of the Order of Calamity, to imitate the plundering ritual of the Age of Enlightenment and reap benefits from all sides by destroying Rolling Stone Town. Their main goal was the Path of Legend. Whether it was the arsonist, the witherer, or the evil art master, if they could personally participate in the destruction of a territory of order and good, it would benefit them endlessly. However, Rolling Stone Town was obviously different from that of the average poor and remote village. The garrison had greatly strengthened the patrols and inspections at the North-South Trade Post in Rolling Stone Town. This greatly increased the difficulty of the evil organization members sneaking in. Even if they managed to sneak in, most people had to give up their weapons to fit in. This was one of the difficulties Leon mentioned. Even if they were inside the town, they were barehanded. How were they going to do anything? The news that Ronan was still suspected to be in Rolling Stone Town became the final fuse. These evil people were not stupid. They were much better than ordinary people in terms of adapting to the situation. Even if something felt a little wrong, they would rather retreat first and then watch. No one was willing to be the first to die. The mine was gradually filled with quarrels and accusations. The members of the three major organizations argued for a long time, but no one was willing to complete the most important activation ceremony. Enough. Anderson shouted angrily. I knew that it would be difficult to accomplish anything with a bunch of motley crew like you. Fortunately, I didn't count on you from the beginning. His cold, venomous gaze swept across the crowd. Firstly, shut your mouths. Your equipment and weapons will arrive soon. Secondly, I'll personally conduct the activation ceremony. After tomorrow, I'll let the shadow of fear fill the sky above Rolling Stone Town. I hope you weaklings won't find any other excuses. And then I have to emphasize again, Ronan is trapped in the astral plane. This is the news that my lord personally told me. If you don't believe me, you can verify it yourself. You should have a channel to verify it. Finally, you should fight for the legendary path that you want and not grumble like a group of chickens. Anderson said as he walked out of the crowd. He opened his hands and suddenly began to chant a spell loudly. Everyone immediately retreated vigilantly. Anderson's spell took effect extremely quickly. After a while, in the next moment, almost transparent jelly-like living creatures appeared in the open space in front of him. Molting gel. Quina's voice was solemn as she took 7 steps back. Now, I'll go to the farm to look for a few unlucky experiment subjects. Those who have the guts, come with me. As he spoke, Anderson waved his hand. The staff in his hand shot out black shadows. In the blink of an eye, the dozen or so molting gels on the ground were put into wooden boxes that appeared out of thin air. In the shadows, a group of short figures rushed out. They struggled to lift the box and followed behind evil art master Anderson. Everyone saw clearly that it was a group of kobolds. What do we say now? Let him enjoy the rewards of the activation ceremony alone. Seeing Anderson's tenacious determination, the evil organization members wavered again. Some of them even began to calculate the benefits of the activation ceremony. At the very least, we should go and take a look. Anderson was the only member of the Order of Natural Disaster who had come today. The others probably had other plans. Quina's eyes flickered as she said, I don't remember there ever being any kobolds under the command of the Order of Calamity. In the mine, everyone discussed for a while and became restless again. They planned to follow him from a distance and observe the situation. They had only taken a few steps. Where did Anderson say he was going to find the unlucky subjects? Leon replied casually, a farm. Damn it. Quina straightened her claws. There's an oak forest on the way from here to the farm. Leon was still confused. And then, is there a flower fairy living in the oak forest? He even made a small joke. No, I didn't, it's all right now. Quina seemed to have thought of something, and her posture became relaxed again. In the next second, she quickened her pace impatiently. Keep up. If we're late, there won't be any fun to watch. North of the oak forest, the 5 Silvermoon zombies were still working hard. Matthew quietly put down his shovel. His eyes were fixed on the north. Eli appeared out of nowhere and stood beside him. There is an evil smell, and it is unprecedentedly strong. They are coming. Following Eli's warning, a series of shadows of varying heights walked out from the entrance of a mine ahead. At this moment, dark clouds were drifting past, covering the bright moonlight. But at that moment, both sides saw each other. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The battle was about to start. Hint, you have encountered the evil arts master Anderson, LV-15, and 33 kobolds. Almost at the same time when the two sides met, Matthew shouted loudly. Ella, Miss Owl, who was doing an enlightenment ceremony for the oak forest, heard Matthew's call and flew southwest without saying a word. That was the location where Matthew and Blake had agreed to set up a new sentry post. Seeing Ella leave safely to report the situation, Matthew heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't have time to change his robe. He quickly took out the defensive psalm and held it in his left hand. He put the cough staff and the withered wood staff on his waist so that he could use them at any time. Eli's reaction was even more extreme. He glared with his eyes wide open and pounced forward on all fours. His entire body expanded, and with a roar, a tall and mighty saber-toothed tiger appeared on the barren land under the moonlight. He actually pounced straight at the enemy. Ambush battles always caught people off guard, but Anderson's reaction was quick. He shook off the cloak on his back and took out a huge mace from his back. The mace emitted a dark red, evil luster. Under his orders, the kobolds' people swarmed out. They charged Eli with their small wooden sticks and small round shields. Matthew keenly noticed that some of the kobolds were holding wooden boxes in their hands. Compared to normal kobolds, their eyeballs were more prominent. Their eyes were bloodshot and had a strange luster similar to Anderson's hammer. Roar! Eli bravely charged into the crowd of kobolds. His body size was enough to crush these small and medium-sized creatures. The saber-toothed tiger pounced, raised its fangs and swept its tail. Immediately, 3 to 4 kobolds died. However, something unexpected happened. The kobolds, who were known for their tendency to flee when their morale was low, displayed a logical bravery. The death of their companion did not make them afraid. Instead, they continued to surge at Eli fearlessly. Eli was strong and would not be hurt by the kobolds. However, there were too many kobolds. With the support of courage, even the ferocious saber-toothed tiger had to circle around them. It was not easy to attack them head-on. A few seconds later, Anderson himself also joined the battle with the dog-headed people. He waved his huge mace and shouted something. The evil art master's incantation was complicated and obscure. He chanted it quickly and incoherently. Matthew did not even have the chance to interrupt it with his cough staff. Anderson had already ended the casting phase. Matthew could only vaguely determine that he had used a total of 3 spells. The first spell was the summoning of a magic pet. Black smoke rose from the moon, and a demon that looked like a hyena with sharp barbs on its tail quietly appeared. Sisuva Magic Hound, Elite/LV10, an abyssal creature, a mid-level demon, usually accompanied by Elite Gnoll. Just as the information about this summoned creature appeared in front of Matthew's eyes, he had also completed his summoning. The glow of the undying contract gradually dimmed. A torn skeleton appeared in front of Matthew. Matthew, what's the meaning of this? I was just listening to some music at home. Peggy grumbled, and then she saw the situation in front of her. She pulled out her bone blade and said, "Who should I chop?" Matthew pointed at the Sisuva Magic Hound that was running toward him. Peggy immediately went up and fought with the demon dog. On the other side, due to Eli's reckless advance, his position was held back by the kobolds. Matthew had just commanded the Silver Moon zombies to reinforce him when the evil arts master Anderson had reached the saber-toothed tiger with his mace. At this moment, Matthew could also tell that the second spell that Anderson cast was a kind of power infusion or physique strengthening spell that originated from his evil god. This was because he saw Anderson's body expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Thrust. The black, thorn-like hair tore through the evil art master's robe. As his body size soared, evil art master Anderson also revealed his hideous appearance. The illusion of human appearance was broken. Under the moonlight, he became a giant gnoll that was 2 meters tall and had abnormally bulging muscles. Deity. The huge gnoll smashed the saber-toothed tiger's waist with its mace. Eli couldn't dodge it completely. He was hit from the side and immediately screamed. Seeing this, the kobolds attacked even harder. Even though the Silver Moon zombies had already rushed to the vicinity to support Eli, Anderson's target, Eli, was in a sorry state. The latter did not expect this evil art master to have the terrifying close combat ability of a gnoll. Anderson kept waving his mace. Eli was slowly being cornered. Helpless, Eli could only hurriedly cast 2 buffs on himself. Then, he prepared to wait for an opportunity to escape. Matthew was also preparing to support Eli. He took out his withered wood staff and aimed it at Anderson's back. At this moment, the evil art master seemed to be wholly focused on chasing after Eli, completely unconcerned about what was happening behind him. All signs indicated that this was the best time to launch a sneak attack. Matthew gripped his withered wood staff tightly. He was indeed preparing to cast the strongest single target spell he could cast, Enhanced Exhaustion Ray. However, at this critical moment, he suddenly remembered the third spell that Anderson had chanted. I'm a caster, so it's illogical for him to ignore me. He had cast 3 spells, so what was the last one? What was the third spell? Matthew stared at Anderson's back, which was emitting red light, and chanted rapidly. A second later, cold air burst out from the tip of the withered wood staff. Immediately after, then, a 1-meter-long ball of white cold air enveloped Anderson's body. Whoosh! A red light flashed on Anderson's body. The white mist instantly disappeared. Matthew felt a sharp pain in the palm of his hand that was holding the magic staff. A slight sense of nausea quickly rose in his heart. Hint: you have used the rank O cantrip Frost Mist on Evil Mage Anderson. You have suffered Anderson's counterspell, Magic Contract Enhanced. Your Frost Mist has lost its effect. You will suffer the punishment of being countered. For 12 minutes, you will not be able to cast any spell of the same level as Frost Mist. Your Focus 0.5 lasts for 18 seconds. Hint: you have successfully identified and used a rank O cantrip to break the enemy's counterspell. You will soon have the opportunity to explore the elements of the battle domain. I knew there was something else. And it's a counterspell that was strengthened by his evil god. Matthew was secretly glad that he had sensed that something was wrong. If he had used a Tier 2 spell, the punishment he would have to endure would probably destroy him. Ever since Matthew had transmigrated, he had hardly fought with a proper spellcaster. This was his first time. As expected, actual combat was different from theory. If Matthew had not been cautious enough, this vicious counterspell would have definitely made him suffer. This planned counterspell also made Matthew realize that Anderson's target from the beginning was him. As expected, after sensing that Matthew had been punished by the law, Anderson turned around. He brandished the mace and quickly launched a surprise attack in Matthew's direction. The kobolds ran even faster. A small portion of them went past the Silvermoon zombies and charged towards Matthew. The rest of them were fighting with the zombies. Seeing this, Eli hurriedly prepared to run back to support Matthew. However, there was already some distance between the two sides. He could only barely catch up to some of the kobolds who were lagging behind. Hiss hiss hiss. Even Sasuva's hound, who was fighting with Peggy, found an opportunity to shake her off. This cunning demon sped up and wanted to attack Matthew from the other side. At the crucial moment, Peggy suddenly took a step forward and threw a bone blade in front of her. Puff. The bone blade that left her hand easily tore the demon dog's head apart. The demon immediately convulsed and fell to the ground. Brain matter and blood mixed together and gushed out from the hole that had been cut open by the bone blade. She couldn't be bothered to deal with the demon dog. Peggy pulled out her bone blade and went to Matthew's side to protect him. Don't be afraid. With me here, no one can hurt you. The soul fire in her brain was burning brightly. Her golden bones gradually turned into a noble dark gold under the moonlight. A gratified smile flashed across Matthew's face. However, his attention was still focused on the Null Evil Art Master who was charging at him. In the next moment, he gripped the withered wood staff tightly and focused his attention. He aimed at Anderson's tall body and fired a solid Enhanced Exhaustion Ray. Anderson took the ray full of negative energy head-on. Its body size had almost shrunk by a portion under the weakening of the exhaustion ray. Not only was Anderson's life slowly fading, but his powerful attributes were also slowly decreasing. However, he did not stop his assault. The kobolds at the front had already started fighting with Peggy. Fortunately, Matthew's reinforcements had also arrived. The skeleton dormitory was not far from here. Matthew used the summoning of the dead to summon 12 skeleton soldiers at the start of the battle. Now, they had finally arrived and surrounded Matthew in the middle. These bones can't protect you, Anderson roared as he charged over. His powerful mace smashed into Peggy, shattering her arm bones and sternum, causing her to stagger to the side. This Tier 4 Evil Art Master's close combat ability was evident. Matthew stared at Anderson. He quickly took 2 steps back. He aimed the withered wood staff in his hand at his opponent again. Whoosh. A gray light flashed. Hint: you have used the negative armor spell on Evil Art Master Anderson. Anderson's armor, Biofur, has been weakened to -1. Your spells can't hurt me. Anderson swept the area with force again. 2 skeleton soldiers were sent flying by him. At this moment, there were less than 20 steps between him and Matthew. However, when he saw Matthew's face under the moonlight, Anderson couldn't help but feel surprised. because there was a confident and calm smile. It was now. Kill him, Matthew whispered. In the shadows that no one could see clearly, a skeleton with his hips twisting appeared silently behind the tall knoll. Anderson didn't have time to turn around. Firefly and Bright Moon had already landed impatiently on his thick neck. The blade went in as if it was kissing a lover's skin. Stab. Blood splattered before the sound. His head fell to the ground with a miserable cry. Under the moonlight, the giant knoll's head rolled on the ground like a ball on the beach. It happened to roll in front of Matthew. Matthew lifted his leg. He stepped on it heavily. Coincidentally, at this moment, another group of figures came out of the cave. They watched in shock as Matthew stepped on Anderson's head. His eyeball squeezed out of the eye sockets. Blood splattered up half a meter. It dyed the necromancer's shoes and clothes red under the moonlight. At the entrance of the mine, Quina watched in disbelief as Matthew stepped on Anderson's head. Of course, she knew that there was a strange necromancer living in the oak forest, and she suspected that he was the one who had the ability to summon bone dragons. However, she did not expect Anderson to be defeated so quickly. He was the Southern Patriarch of the Order of Calamity, a genuine Tier 4 evil arts master, the organizer of the 3 organizations' expedition, and the strongest among them. This scene also shocked the other members. Their originally unstable fighting spirit instantly melted away like melting snow. Many people subconsciously retreated, wanting to hide behind the others. In the end, they realized that everyone had retreated. After Anderson's head fell to the ground, the situation on the battlefield also became clear. The originally fearless kobolds all covered their heads and scurried towards the entrance of the cave. However, their escape route was blocked by Eli. The saber-toothed tiger showed off its might as he dealt with the escaping kobolds. One slap, one kill. Soon all the kobolds were eliminated. The only fish that had escaped the net was the Sasuva demon hound. This demon's vitality was shockingly tenacious. Even though Peggy had punctured its skull and a small amount of brain matter was leaking out, it still managed to stumble away. This scene fell into Matthew's eyes. He frowned. The Sasuva demon hound is a creature from another world. After the knoll dies, it should not be able to maintain its existence in the prime material plane. Almost at the same time, suddenly, a violent tremor came from under his feet. Matthew reacted quickly. He lifted his leg and launched a heavy kick. Bang! Anderson's head exploded in the air, turning into a strange blood mist. Matthew saw it clearly. There were human faces, bugs, brain grooves, and clusters of extremely evil runes in the blood mist. At the same time, the badge of the goddess of moonlight on his chest began to tremble violently. Retreat! Matthew growled. Under cover of the skeletons, they quickly left the blood mist and the headless corpse. The blood mist wrapped the knoll's corpse like an octopus. In the next moment, a solemn voice came from the blood mist. That person's words were extremely rigid and clear. It was as if it was echoing in the hearts of everyone present. I'll grant you an undying body. Wherever the night goes, you'll live endlessly and be indestructible. As soon as he finished speaking, the headless corpse of the knoll slowly stood up from the ground. Unknowingly, a smooth neck grew out from the undamaged head. Everyone was stunned by this strange scene. Even for the members of the evil organization, such a scene of resurrection was extremely rare. Hehehe, I'm immortal. Anderson shook his neck from side to side as if he was trying to get used to this new head. His eyes were evil and unscrupulous as he locked onto Matthew as if he wanted to swallow him alive. The blood mist still hadn't dispersed. It was like a protective halo that enveloped the knoll. Matthew sensed a strong domain from the blood mist. At this moment, a message formed by moonlight suddenly appeared on the constantly vibrating badge. The god of the knoll Anderson is the evil demon Trier of the ancient land, and Trier is actually the incarnation of the god of midnight. The blessing of the god of midnight is only effective at midnight. If it is delayed until dawn, his undying blessing will be broken. Asia Moonlight, the midnight god. Was this matter actually related to the heavenly palace? Matthew didn't doubt the authenticity of this information. After all, this was in line with the goddess of moonlight's many attempts to curry favor with him. Even if she had any designs on him, it would be something else. However, whether it was Asia or the god of midnight who had transformed a man into an evil spirit, it meant that the exiled gods had started to make their move. This was not good news for this world that was lagging behind in development. This thought flashed through Matthew's mind. He suddenly pulled out a crossbow and aimed it at Anderson, who was in the blood mist. Come on. You can't kill me. Anderson shouted crazily. Matthew judged that he was still in a temporary state of paralysis after being resurrected, so he no longer hesitated. An arrow shot out from the pile of skeleton soldiers and hit Anderson in the chest. The arrow pierced the gnoll's chest, and the gnoll pulled it out as if it did not feel pain. It then twisted the arrow in half in front of Matthew. However, Matthew did not stop. He raised his hand and swiftly took out another loaded crossbow from his magical bag and aimed it at Anderson. Whoosh! Another arrow. Anderson glared angrily. "You're doing useless work." He had just pulled out the second arrow from his chest when the third arrow flew over. However, Matthew missed this time, and the arrow pierced the gnoll's knee. The 3 consecutive arrows made him furious. The blood mist began to move slowly toward Matthew. However, Matthew, who had missed his 3 shots, sneakily retreated towards the oak forest. He met up with Eli. With the Silvermoon zombies and skeleton soldiers as protection, they retreated in an orderly manner. Only Soldier was ordered by Matthew to harass the evil art masters in the blood mist. After receiving the order, Soldier immediately limped towards Anderson. His dance steps were sometimes stiff and sometimes smooth. Everyone saw the skeleton that was always twisting its hips around the blood mist in a probing manner. From time to time, he would strike. The short knife could easily tear open the skin of the gnoll, leaving a mark on his body that was neither deep nor shallow. However, the effect was limited. The blood mist seemed to have given Anderson an insufferably vibrant life force. No matter how Soldier added wounds to his body, he could always recover quickly, and his aura became stronger and stronger. "This gnoll's close combat ability is too strong," said Eli fearfully. "I'm afraid that only guardians of the same level can take him head-on. Ordinary warriors can't do anything to him." Matthew nodded lightly. Peggy and Eli were both Tier 3 melee experts, but they were barely a match for Anderson. The pressure that this guy gave off on the battlefield was indeed too great. He had seen through this, which was why he had chosen to lure the enemy in and cooperate with Soldier's sneak attack. However, who knew that an evil art master actually had the protection of a true god? Even though the heavenly palace was far away and the god of midnight could not directly interfere on the battlefield, the blessing he gave through his avatar was already troublesome enough. "Eli, I need you to cooperate with my skeleton assassin and continue to pressure him. I'll give you some support from behind." Matthew voiced his thoughts. Eli didn't refuse. He just asked curiously, "He's immortal now. What's the use of your crossbow and our harassment?" "I'm not thinking of killing him now. I'm just trying to weaken him as much as possible," Matthew said calmly. "Didn't you notice that his movements are much slower than before?" Eli was enlightened. "Are you using poison arrows?" Matthew nodded. It seems that his immortal body is not omnipotent. The effects of the powerful exhaustion ray and the negative armor debuff have been purified, but the poison on the crossbow will still slow him down. This is not enough to kill him. We are facing a protracted battle. Eli took a deep breath. "I understand. You need me to force him to use his other abilities." Matthew's eyes flashed with caution. "Yes, while the others are still hesitating, try your best to put pressure on him. I suspect that he still has a powerful killing move other than resurrection, so you have to be careful." Anderson was the strongest enemy Matthew had ever faced since he transmigrated. Because it was an ambush, both sides were almost unprepared. The attack just now was the best decision Matthew made on the spot. Things had come to this. Matthew didn't have many cards in his hand, and he definitely couldn't use his trump card, Bone Dragon, for 2 reasons. First, revealing his trump card meant that he had to be prepared to escape. Clearly, he had not reached that step yet. Second, Matthew's trump card was actually a non-secret. The Order of Calamity was aware of the existence of the skeletal dragon, but they still dared to come and cause trouble. This meant that they had the means to fight the skeletal dragon. In such a situation, showing his cards first was equivalent to sending himself to his death. Matthew had to rely on other methods to delay Anderson. At this moment, his gaze was locked onto the gnoll evil art master. His attention was unprecedentedly focused, and he did not want to miss a single detail. Eli understood Matthew's tactics. He switched from his wild form to a more agile jungle lynx, and he worked with Soldier to harass Anderson. The injured Peggy was in charge of supporting them from further away. Matthew, on the other hand, kept retreating at a moderate pace. In the blood mist, Anderson was pincered from both front and back. Even though his recovery ability was amazing, he was still harassed tirelessly. The spiked hammer in his hand was extremely lethal, but it just couldn't hit Soldier and Eli. The former's footsteps were strange. He was clearly a skeleton, but his movements were as slippery as an earthworm. After the latter transformed into a lynx, his agility skyrocketed. Furthermore, Eli did not focus on attacking but on harassing. He didn't give Anderson any chance to hurt him. The group retreated while fighting. They gradually approached the edge of the oak forest. Finally, Anderson also realized that his movements were a little too slow. He cast purification on himself to temporarily suppress the poison. The blood mist dispersed bit by bit. He seemed to have been completely freed from the stun of resurrection. Suddenly, he rushed forward and almost injured Eli, but Soldier, under Matthew's command, pounced behind Anderson like a ghost. Firefly and Bright Moon were about to repeat the same trick. But this time, Anderson dodged at the last moment. The pair of daggers only tore through the gnoll's scalp and did not decapitate it again. Unable to succeed, Soldier quickly blended into the shadows. Anderson's face was flushed red from the tactic. He finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Under Matthew's scorching gaze, the gnoll tore off a palm-sized piece of fur from its chest. The back of the fur was filled with twisted words. Anderson held the fur in his hand and glared in the direction where Soldier disappeared. He shouted, "You don't belong here." As he spoke, that piece of fur actually started to burn out of thin air. Soldier's figure suddenly appeared. His movements were a little stiff at first, and then a dark gray negative energy halo lit up under his feet. "You don't belong here." Anderson roared again. The halo completely engulfed Soldier. Hint: the evil art master Anderson has used the banishment letter on your summoned creature. Soldier has been banished for a short period of time. Currently, Soldier is in the negative energy plane. Time limit before you can summon Soldier again, 4 hours. Banishment letter, magic contract enhancement, an exile spell stained with the blood of the great demon Trier. It can banish any non-legendary creature from the material world for a short period of time. The duration depends on the level of the banished subject and the will of the summoner. Soldier was banished. Anderson had completely regained his spirit and his movements became faster and faster. The pressure on Eli instantly increased a lot. Anderson used his hammer to force Eli back. Then, he charged toward Matthew without any regard for anything else. However, Matthew's eyes flashed with indescribable excitement. "So, the banishment document is your trump card against the bone dragon." He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he ordered the skeleton soldiers and zombies to disperse. He quickly ran towards the oak forest. In the forest, the sound of horse hooves could be heard. Matthew ran with a smile on his face. He knew he was definitely not fighting alone. The significance of the sentry post was vividly reflected in this battle. Matthew had never thought of fighting against the 3 evil organizations on his own, and so after the failed ambush, his tactics immediately changed to delaying and probing. And Ella didn't disappoint. Amidst the sound of horse hooves, a total of 8 cavalrymen had successfully arrived in front of Matthew. The leader of the group was Blake, who was fully armed, and Zeller, who was dressed in casual clothes. The remaining 6 knights were also armed to the teeth. Matthew knew that they were not members of the garrison but the Lord's guards. His lordship already knows. He ordered me to come over first, and follow-up reinforcements are already on the way. Zeller dismounted and stood beside Matthew. The knights, on the other hand, were slowly advancing with their spears in their hands. Under the night sky, the 3-meter-long spear gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. This was a real military weapon. Even Anderson, who thought highly of himself, was no longer arrogant. He did not dare to continue chasing but hurriedly retreated to the entrance of the mine. Blake and the others were about to give chase. Matthew quickly reminded them, "Be careful. Those wooden boxes are strange." Hearing this, the knights hurriedly tightened their reins. The moonlight shone on the barren land in front of them. There were more than 10 wooden boxes scattered around the corpses of the kobolds. A few of the boxes had been knocked open by the fall, and they looked empty. However, Matthew's nerves were beating violently. "Be careful. It's molting gel. Do you have sight powder?" He saw the notification. He knew that the monster in the wooden box had sneaked over under the cover of the night and in its unique form. Without saying a word, Zeller threw a glass bottle at the empty space in front of him. With a bang, the bottle shattered, and light purple smoke spread out from it. Wherever the smoke went, some of the molting gel that was originally difficult to distinguish with the naked eye was instantly dyed with a thick layer of purple. This was sight powder, a powerful tool for mid- and low-level adventurers to fight against invisible units. The disadvantage was that it was expensive, and even Matthew could not afford it. The fastest molting gel was already close to its position. The horse at the front suddenly raised its front hooves in shock and neighed. The knight managed to maintain his balance and pulled the reins to the side. Blake reacted quickly and stabbed his spear forward. The iron spear easily pierced through the jelly-like body of the molting gel, but the latter was only nailed to the ground and could not move. It seemed that it was not dead. We can't kill them like this. We need fire or lightning, or we can just dry the water in their bodies. As a mage, Matthew's basic skills were still passable. The molting gel was a kind of sludge-like monster, and its form was transparent and jelly-like. Their movement speed was not fast, but they were also extremely easy to miss. Once a living creature accidentally touches the molting gel, the gel will rapidly expand and engulf the living creature at the fastest speed. The person wrapped in the molting gel will suffer great pain for 72 hours. They will not be able to escape or struggle and can only await the arrival of death. Their flesh, blood, internal organs, and even bones would be easily digested by the molting gel, leaving behind only a few strands of hair and complete human skin. The molting gel would spit out the human skin and hair after digestion. After leaving it in place, it would set off to look for the next prey. It was precisely because of this characteristic that some evil spellcasters or organizations would store molting gel and use it to skin themselves. Of course, there were many examples in history where they were accidentally eaten alive because of the molting gel. This thing was far from being as clumsy and harmless as it looked. Matthew reminded everyone. Everyone began to eliminate the molting gel. Zeller also carefully calculated the number of wooden boxes to prevent any of the molting gel from getting away and harming the residents nearby. Matthew took advantage of this opportunity to cast the undead summoning spell on the pile of kobold corpses. Hint: undead summoning has been successfully cast. You have obtained 30 silver moon kobold zombies, average level 6. You have obtained 3 kobold skeleton soldiers, average level 0. After a round of summoning, Matthew's mana was mostly depleted. The kobolds who had been fighting for the Order of Calamity instantly turned into undead and turned against them. Other than 3 whose corpses were too damaged by Eli and thus could only be revived as skeletons, the rest of the kobolds were all transformed into Silvermoon zombies. Compared to the Silvermoon zombies transformed from humans, these undead kobolds were smaller in size and lower in level, but they also inherited the characteristics of Bark Spell, Moonlight Power, and Holy Moon Armor. Other than their reduced agility, they were stronger than living kobolds in all other aspects. This was the first time Matthew had controlled so many undead creatures at the same time. However, he did not feel flustered. Instead, it felt like he was playing an RTS game. He drew a frame in his mind and ordered the kobolds to attack, defend, or idle. Easy orders could usually be carried out smoothly, but it was difficult to give more detailed instructions. If he wanted to carry out more detailed micro-control, Matthew had to learn the magic skills related to group control. With the help of the kobold zombies, he cleaned up the molting gel. The pressure on the knights was instantly reduced. They turned their attention to the entrance of the mine. At this moment, the people at the entrance also had a fierce argument with Anderson. "We've been discovered by the officials of Rolling Stone Town. That evil necromancer doesn't look like someone to be trifled with. We don't have any weapons, and we lack manpower. It's time to admit that this operation failed." A one-eyed man said this and walked into the mine without looking back. Although the others did not say it explicitly, they all agreed with his opinion. Only Anderson's eyes were gloomy and burning with anger, but he had no intention of retreating. Quina and Leon looked at each other. Both of them sensed that something was amiss. However, there were a few knights outside the cave who had already bypassed the remaining molting gel and were chasing after them. Their eyes revealed the intention to retreat. For the members of the evil organization, the courage to admit defeat and know how to protect themselves was the highest principle of survival. If Anderson and the Order of Calamity could really tear open the wounds of Rolling Stone Town through the activation ceremony and cause panic there, they would not mind adding icing on the cake and joining forces with the Order of Calamity to carry out a party of evil organizations in Rolling Stone Town. However, the current situation was different. Rolling Stone Town was harder to deal with than they had imagined. Then they had better leave. That was the best plan. More and more people retreated into the cave. A mocking smile appeared on Anderson's face. Quina and Leon frowned and walked into the cave. But not long after, the people who had left earlier suddenly ran out of the cave. "Move aside." A rough voice came from the depths of the cave. Several peripheral members of the Silver Frost Brotherhood were unable to dodge in time and were sent flying to the stone wall by a huge force. Boom. 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 The entire mine cave shook violently. Everyone was forced to regroup at the entrance of the cave in shock. Another feminine voice sounded, "How many times have I told you not to hammer people into the wall? The soil here is soft. If you're not careful, you'll be buried alive." Accompanied by a voice. A dark-skinned, slim female drow walked out of the shadows. She had very little fabric on her body and could barely protect her vital parts. Other than her hot figure, the thing that attracted everyone's attention the most was the scimitars hanging on both sides of her long thighs. The curved edge of the scimitar was very wide, and the edge of the scimitar flickered with silver light. There was no doubt that this was a drow warrior with extraordinary combat strength. Behind her, a troll with dark blue skin and a head that almost reached the ceiling of the cave was walking lazily. Compared to a normal troll, the most special thing about this troll was that he was too fat. He alone almost filled the entire tunnel. It was clearly this troll who sent the gang members flying. "Hey, little girl, it doesn't matter how many times you tell Sinwok." The troll threw a tantrum at the drow warrior and said, "Sinwok's memory lasts for 17 seconds at most. It's useless for you to tell him this. It's useless." The drow warrior rolled her eyes. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on this idiot. Everyone was forced out of the cave. They watched as the fat troll struggled to squeeze its body out of the hole and fell to the side. Boom. The ground trembled slightly. The troll lay on the ground and moaned comfortably. "Sinwok, you're the most self-aware troll I've ever seen, but please tell me in advance the next time you lie down. I have a phobia of earthquakes." Two more people walked out from behind the troll. The one who spoke was a boarman holding a huge axe. And the warrior beside him was even more eye-catching. He was not tall, and there was a circle of fine scales and a short horn on his forehead. He had a long tail on his back, and the scales on his tail were dark blue, emitting a strange luster in the night. Combined with his deep pupils, the identity of this warrior was obvious. He was a half-dragon or a drakon. Warning, you have encountered the Order of Calamity Southern Quartet minus. Headhunter Lara, Drow Warrior /LV-15, Angry Mountain Sinwok, Troll /LV-14. 100 Manslayer Meddis, Drakon Spellcaster /LV-14. Deep Howling Butcher Banwen, Boar Warrior /LV-14. You have encountered the Underground Coalition Army from the Abyss, kobolds, gnolls, imps, lesser inferior demons, etc. There are more than 300 of them. He looked at the lines of information. Matthew's eyelids twitched. He guessed that the Order of Calamity would not send Anderson alone. However, he did not expect the other party's reinforcements to be so fierce. It was fine if there were just 4 elite adventurers. But there was a whole army as well. "I'm afraid this isn't a plundering ritual at all. The Church of Calamity wants to attack Rolling Stone Town." Zeller looked very serious. "We might have misjudged the enemy's true purpose." Matthew was also on guard. He looked in the direction of the cave in the distance. Countless kobolds and gnolls were pouring out of the cave, and they were still giving weapons to the Silver Frost Brotherhood and the Withering Order. At this juncture, the other 2 organizations had no other choices. They were forced to join the Order of Calamity. War. At the very least, a small-scale battle was unavoidable. "We might need to retreat first," Zeller suggested. "Wait a moment." After Matthew said this, he stared in the direction of the cave entrance. Zeller followed his gaze. He saw evil art master Anderson cursing at his subordinates. "Do it," Matthew suddenly whispered. The air around Anderson twisted, and several half-broken bottles smashed into his body and feet. In the next second, the gnoll's head, back, and chest suddenly burst into flames. "Who is it?" The gnoll roared angrily and smashed the mace in its hand, but it missed. Peggy, who had sneaked in and succeeded in her attack, ran quickly. Before Anderson could react, the torn skeleton had already run far away. Only the others were left to put out the fire in a hurry. However, what Peggy used were the blazing glue and Molotov cocktail that Matthew had obtained from the arsonist. Once the flame was ignited, it could not be contained. Moreover, Anderson's fur had become the best fuel. In just a few seconds. In the process of Anderson jumping up and down, his black fur was burnt clean. The strange blood mist appeared again. The resurrection power bestowed by the God of Midnight could save the gnoll's life and also have the opportunity to quickly regenerate his fur. However, the most important pieces of fur were no longer there. Hint, Paige used blazing glue to burn the gnoll's fur and 2 copies of banishment letters hidden in its chest hair. So you were still hiding your 2 more banishment letters. Such schemes. Matthew smiled in relief. In the next second, just as Anderson furiously ordered his men to charge into the oak forest. A bright circle of light flashed across the open space in front of them. A mountain-sized skeleton appeared out of thin air. It turned its head and looked straight at the entrance of the cave. The soul fire in its skull was as terrifying as the lamp of the Grim Reaper. At that moment, everyone felt as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was shattering. Filey entered the arena with the might of a dragon. In an instant, it intimidated the kobolds and gnolls who had just charged forward. The skeletal dragon slightly opened its wings, and its bony neck twisted in the air. In the next second, its jaw opened, and thick black smoke gushed out from its chest. Dragon breath. The dragon breath that was mixed with poison and acid shot out in a cone shape. The fan-shaped area in front of the skeletal dragon was covered in black smoke. The underground creatures at the front didn't even have the chance to scream before they were killed by the terrifying breath. Filey charged forward again. Boom. Filey's mountain-like body rolled over the barren land. Dozens of dead bodies appeared on the ground. It had made outstanding military achievements when it first appeared, but it was not greedy for credit. Seeing that the enemy's main force was fleeing in fear, it instead cautiously stood guard in place, only its head facing Matthew's direction, looking proud of itself. Filey's action was in line with Matthew's train of thought. The bone dragon was definitely a great weapon to kill small fries. However, the evil art masters, who were nearly invincible in close combat, and the newly arrived southern four-man team were deep behind the enemy formation. Their levels were not much different from the bone dragon, and if they rushed over rashly, there was a risk of being torn apart. Without the banishment letter, the battle will only drag on to our advantage. Matthew's train of thought was very clear. This was Rolling Stone Town, his home ground, and in a tug-of-war, the more corpses on the ground, the better for the necromancer. Therefore, he and Zeller quickly communicated for a while. The knights slowly drew back their formation in the direction of the oak forest. Everyone paid close attention to the changes in the enemy. At the entrance of the cave, over 100 underground creatures were intimidated by the skeletal dragon and were running around like headless flies. Some of the weaker ones were even trampled to death by their companions. Seeing this scene, the few members of the Order of Calamity acted decisively. The burly Borman warrior carried a brown flag and rushed into the chaotic formation. With his physique, the underground creatures he bumped into along the way were sent flying. Just like that, the wild Borman knocked away more than 10 kobolds and came to a relatively empty wasteland. The next moment, he suddenly stuck the flag into the ground in front of him. Hoya. The wild boar warrior patted the mane on his chest and let out a loud roar. The battle flag shook without wind. The halo spread through the battleground. The panicked underground creatures were relieved of their shock. At the same time, the Drakon swordsman had been following him. When he saw the flag's effect activated, the half-dragon pulled out a pitch-black horn. Woo-woo-woo. The horn sounded. The underground creatures trembled when they heard the sound, and then they moved toward the direction of the flag. The fear in their eyes disappeared. What replaced it was a strong battle intent. Just like that. With a flag and a horn, the chaotic situation instantly calmed down. The army of the Order of Calamity had assembled once again. During this process, more and more underground creatures were coming out of the cave. More and more underground troops gathered on the barren land. Well done, Banwin, Medis. Anderson praised loudly. Then, he looked at the fat troll beside him. Sinwok, it's your turn. I know it'll be easy for you to take down that damned bone dragon. Who knew that the troll was lying comfortably on the ground? For a moment, he refused to get up. Shush. Sinwok isn't going anywhere. I'll just lie here and wait for the enemies to come before I tear them apart. Anderson couldn't help but berate, we are at war. For the sake of the Great Yurkus, can't you rest after the match? The troll was indifferent. The Great Yurkus didn't say that Sinwok couldn't lie down for a while. Sinwok had already rushed for half a day and successfully arrived at the battlefield. What else do you want Sinwok to do? Anderson was furious at his attitude. Don't make me beat you up, Sinwok. He raised the mace in his hand sternly. It doesn't matter. Sinwok's memory is only 17 seconds at most. The troll lay down lazily. Only 2 thick moss-covered buttocks were exposed, facing Anderson. Bang. Anderson was so angry that he smashed his hammer down, accurately hitting the troll's head. The latter's eyes turned white, and his body trembled. Then, a heavy snore sounded. Sinwok. Anderson was furious. Let him sleep for a while. Considering the age of the trolls, Sinwok is still a 5-year-old child. The drow warrior beside him said casually. Anderson looked at her angrily. How long will he sleep? Lara tidied her hair. Who knows? Last time, he dared to sleep in front of the old black dragon and slept for a full 80 hours. The black dragon was so angry that it almost castrated him. IJN Fortnite OV. The black dragon's subordinates could not find the Sinwalk's genitals. He's really too fat. I'm really worried about his future wife. Anderson was speechless. He glanced at the depths of the mine. So where is Black Dragon Aegis? Did he refuse to come? Lara said sarcastically, it's not like you don't know the old Black Dragon's character. When he was young, he fantasized about dominating the underground world. Later, after being defeated by the Dracolic and the Fire Tribe, he was scared out of his wits. To this day, he only wants to live a peaceful life with his hundreds of wives of different races. He's already giving the order face by lending his troops. Anderson said coldly. It's not like he doesn't have the intention of coveting the surface world. The reason why he doesn't want to come personally is because he's afraid of Ronin. Lara said matter-of-factly, who isn't afraid of that lunatic Ronin? If it weren't for the fact that my lord had explicitly told me that Ronin was trapped in the astral plane, I would never have gotten involved in this mess. Anderson nodded. His tone was much gentler. Lara, do you see that bone dragon? It is a great enemy on the battlefield. I need you to kill that necromancer. This will greatly reduce our losses. Don't worry. I've already fought with that necromancer. His level isn't high, at most 3rd tier. His bone dragon should have been obtained by chance. Who knew that? Lara would quickly shake her head in refuse. My mission is to contact the old Black Dragon Aegis, mobilize the army, and protect your life. I won't do anything else. Anderson's blood pressure, which had just dropped, rose again. So, you plan to stand by and watch? Lara replied without hesitation, the purpose of my existence is to ensure that even if you are defeated, your corpse can be transported back to the Holy Church in a relatively complete state for resurrection. After all, this was a precious body bestowed by the gods. In all of the South, you are the only one with such an honor. I can't let your dead body be left outside. Anderson shook his head angrily, his mace clenched tightly. Lara was still expressionless. I thought you had already gotten used to life in the Order. It seems that your greatness still needs some growth. I advise you not to look at me like that. I'm not a stupid troll. If I feel threatened, I don't mind turning you into a corpse and bringing you back to the Holy Church in advance. As she spoke, her right hand was already on the scimitar on the outside of her thigh. Please, can't you show any of the Order's camaraderie and unity? Anderson, didn't you always say that we're a family? The wild Borman warriors guarding the battle flag in the distance seemed to have sensed the tense atmosphere. He complained loudly, besides, can't you control the 2 groups of people you've roped in? They've already run away. Anderson was stunned. He quickly looked in the direction the Borman warrior was pointing. The Silver Frost Brotherhood and the Order of Withering had scattered and fled after taking their weapons. But this time, they did not run into the mine. Instead, they retreated towards the northwest. One of them did not seem to be running away from Rolling Stone Town. Anderson shouted with a gloomy expression, don't bother about them. Let's finish the battle quickly. Van Wen, you and Maddis are old partners. You two can lead the team to take down the Bone Dragon. After receiving the affirmative reply from the Borman and the Drakon, Anderson then ordered a strong knoll to lead a small army to bypass the main battlefield and sneak attack the farm next to it and to create as much chaos as possible. That's why. Amidst the troll, Sinwalk's deafening snores, the situation changed again. The underground coalition army launched its attack in an orderly manner. The Lord's Manor and the camp beside it were brightly lit. The sound of gathering footsteps could be heard. In a room, Sif, who was in her pajamas, looked worriedly at her father, who was getting armed. Must you go? Uncle Zeller and the other cousins and Blake can handle it, right? Rieger adjusted his armor and replied seriously. The people of the Suki family will not run away from the battle. When our people are threatened by invaders, the only thing we need to do is to kill them with our own hands. He thought for a moment and said, the battle is at the Oak Forest. Your teacher might be there too. Although I don't like him, I have to protect him. Sif bit her lip. But I'm also a member of the Suki family. I also want to go together. Rieger turned around and gently patted her head. The blood of the clan indeed flows in your veins. At some point in the future, you will step onto the battlefield like me and fight for things that are very important to you, but that is definitely not today. Sif broke free from his hand. But you're not even willing to teach me how to fight. I'm going to be 16 soon. You've been lying to me all this time. I know you only want to protect me, but I really don't want to live under your protection forever. Ruger was stunned for a moment. He bent down and gently grabbed his daughter's shoulder, his eyes bright. Fighting is not a difficult thing for the Blood Flag family. Sif, I swear to you that one day, you will become an outstanding warrior. But before that, my daughter, please let me protect you, okay? Sif pursed her lips and took a few deep breaths. She pushed Rieger away with tears in her eyes. I know. I'm just worried about you, Uncle Zeller, and Matthew. I shouldn't have delayed you. I just couldn't control myself. You don't have to worry about me. Go. I promise you. I will stay safe in the house until you come back. Hurry. Hearing Sif's promise, Rieger smiled in relief. He put on his helmet and took a heavy two-handed sword from the wall. He carried it on his shoulder and walked out quickly. Very quickly. Outside the camp. Under the leadership of Rieger, the Knights of the Lord's Guards rushed in the direction of the oak forest in an orderly manner. Just as the last team disappeared from the front of the Lord's residence. In an alley opposite, a few sneaky figures quietly appeared. Boss Leon. The Lord's Manor's people have come out in full force. At this moment, their internal defenses are empty. Should we go straight into the manor? In the alley, a member of the Silver Frost Brotherhood suppressed his excitement and said. Leon's expression changed. He raised his hand and smacked the man's head. Don't even think about it. Do you think the people of the Suki family are fools? Rieger had at least left a small team in the manor. The Lord's Mansion must have other security forces. Moreover, what good would attacking the Lord's Mansion do us? The lackey scratched his head in embarrassment. Leon looked at the flickering lights in the manor and waved his hand decisively. Let's go. Where to? A few lackeys quickly asked. Prison, of course. Boss Dean, Morris and my stupid partner Jonas are all in prison. Now is the time to save them. Leon calmly led his men through Rolling Stone Town at night. After Jonas was arrested for participating in the Martin Run, he had secretly scouted Rolling Stone Town countless times. At this moment, he was familiar with the place. After a while, they arrived outside the high walls of Rolling Stone Town Prison. Northeast. There was a tall tower. There seemed to be someone watching from above. Just as Leon was about to personally lead his team to the watchtower to take out the guards, suddenly there was a commotion near the high wall. A few figures sneaked out from under the high wall. Boss Dean. Leon shouted uncertainly. Leon. You came at the right time. Damn it, we finally met a reliable friend. In the darkness, Dean cursed as he walked out. Behind him was Jonas, who looked ashamed. As for the tall Morris, he was supporting Dean. Leon then noticed that Dean was limping. Before he could ask, Dean took the initiative to scold, Jonas, that idiot. I brought him out of prison, but he fell in the tunnel I dug. In the end, he was fine, but he broke my leg. Leon had a strange look on his face. After a long time, he finally managed to hold back his laughter. Leon called the other lackeys over and looked at the watchtower nervously. Then do we need to evacuate this town quickly? The Order of Calamity has brought the Underground Coalition army with them, and they are very powerful. If we continue to cooperate with them, our relationship will probably be out of balance. Dean shook his head. You shouldn't have been instigated by the Order of Calamity from the beginning. They have a deep relationship with the underground people, and they are not on the same path as us. Rolling Stone Town isn't as simple as you think. I still don't understand how I was captured by them. The bearded garrison captain is indeed powerful, but he can't keep up with my speed. This is why I haven't escaped. If I hadn't received your emergency signal, I wouldn't have taken the risk to come out now. Morris couldn't help but interrupt, Boss Dean, aren't we being too careful? Maybe we just slipped that day. And look at how we escaped, and their guards didn't even notice us. In my opinion, Rolling Stone Town isn't any different from other towns. Jonas expressed a different opinion. I think this town is a little strange. I was caught just because I ran a little faster. This is unbelievable. However, Dean interrupted him, I don't want to hear you again. Shut up. Jonas lowered his head in the grievance. We're already out. It's definitely impossible for us to leave just like that. Dean whispered, Leon, report to me the information from the outside. Let's ignore the watchtower first. The group of people left the prison in small groups. A moment later, they found an abandoned workshop to hide in. Dean hurriedly dealt with the fractured calf and used his outstanding tenacity to suppress the pain. So, are they going to have a decisive battle in the north of Rolling Stone Town? After listening to Leon's narration, Dean's eyes lit up. Then we can't just leave like this. We have to do something. Morris said excitedly, take advantage of the situation and kill them all. Leon cautiously suggested, I don't think it's necessary for us to draw the attention of the Order of Calamity. We don't know the internal defense of Rolling Stone Town either. If we poke the hornet's nest rashly, we might get caught in it. Dean nodded in agreement. You're right. We don't have to, and we don't have the right to kill in Rolling Stone Town. Remember our profession. We're arsonists, not murderers. Restraint is the most important virtue. We'll just set the fire and leave the rest to the Order of Calamity. The question now is, where should we start the fire? Leon immediately drew a sketch of Rolling Stone Town on the ground. First, we'll eliminate the Mage area, the Suki family area, and prison area. Although the Mage district in Rolling Stone Town has an empty title, Dean calmly analyzed. Ronan is also said to be trapped in the astral world. There is no need to take the initiative to make enemies with the legendary mage. It's the same in the Suki family district. There are only small nobles and knights there, and our principle has always been to kill civilians rather than offend nobles. There are many guards in the prison area. Although these guards are not powerful, it is still troublesome to deal with them. Only the craftsman area, workshop area, civilian area, and farm area were left on the map. Theoretically, the civilian area and the farm area are the best, but the former is too far away from us and close to the battlefield. The latter is simply at the edge of the battlefield, so the risk is too high. There are not many people in the workshop area at night. Even if the fire is successfully set, it will be difficult to create chaos. Following Dean's exquisite analysis, only the craftsman district was left on the map. Let's go there, Dean said decisively. The group moved out again. Jonas carried the limping Dean towards the craftsman's area. 10 minutes later, in the center of the craftsman area. This is it. This iconic building is tailor-made for us. Dean suppressed his excitement. In the art of arson, the more people involved, the better the effect. The more famous the building that was burned, the better. The building in front of him was obviously the most eye-catching one in the craftsman's district. Jonas, carry me. Morris and I will set the fire inside. Leave a few people behind for support. Dean quickly arranged. After setting the fire, we will leave the town from the northwest. Leon, you go and arrange the retreat route. Of course, you can also choose some suitable targets to burn along the way. Leon nodded in dissatisfaction. Dean did this because he didn't want to share the spoils. He was clearly the most intelligent one in the Brotherhood. Leon suppressed his unhappiness and brought a few of his followers to the north of the craftsman's district. The rest of the people quietly sneaked into the building under Dean's lead. The moonlight shone gently. Outside the hall on the first floor, the sign of the Craftsman Protection Association was clearly visible. North of the oak forest, evil art master Anderson's order was firmly carried out. On the battlefield, led by the flag-carrying boar warrior, they advanced step by step. From the side, a strong gnoll led a group of people around the forest and attacked in a roundabout way. They want to attack the farm area, Matthew reminded. I'll go. Zeller suddenly mounted his horse. His riding skills were superb, and he soon arrived at the eastern part of the forest. It had to be said that his action was very dangerous. Under the pressure of the enemy, a spellcaster who left the team without permission could easily be targeted by the enemy. However, Zeller was very confident. He sat on the back of the horse and suddenly chanted a very short spell. Then, Matthew saw him take out a musket from his backpack. Magic gun. Matthew didn't expect Zeller to have such high-quality goods. Bang. Zeller gently pulled the trigger of the magic blaster, and a blazing fireball shot out. It actually crossed a distance of about 200 meters and hit the wildland east of the Gnoll squad in the oak forest. Not only that, after the fireball landed on the ground, it burned fiercely into a wall of fire that was 30 meters long. At the same time, the spell Zeller had chanted earlier also took effect. A strong wind suddenly blew around him. Immediately after, an air elemental with an extremely muscular appearance appeared out of thin air. Zeller ordered him skillfully. The air elemental flew to the top of the wall of fire with a reluctant look on its face and then blew down fiercely. Hoo hoo hoo. The walls of fire extended for 50 to 60 meters on both sides. Its height had also increased to more than 2 meters. The knoll eastward route was instantly blocked. Zeller had single-handedly obstructed Anderson's plan to divide his forces. Matthew heaved a sigh of relief. He took a look at the shape and color of the air elemental and determined that it was an air elemental elder. This meant that Zeller was at least a tier 4 warlock. He felt much more at ease. Then, he turned his attention to the battlefield. In fact, ever since the appearance of the bone dragon, Matthew had been working hard on his job, summoning the dead. More and more corpses were awakened by him. The good ones would become Silvermoon zombies, and the bad ones would become skeleton soldiers. These undead creatures lined up in an irregular formation in the north of the oak forest, silently welcoming the army that was inspired by the horn. As Matthew summoned more and more undead creatures, his mana was also gradually running out. His head was in even more pain. I can't drop the ball at this juncture. Matthew took a deep breath. He took out 3 items from the bottom of the magic bag: negative energy stones, sobriety stickers, and mana tobacco leaves. He held the negative energy stone in his palm to reduce the negative energy consumption when summoning the dead. The sobriety sticker was pasted on his forehead. It could provide a cool and stinging sensation and stimulate the recovery of mana to a certain extent. However, long-term use had great side effects, and it was easy for me to become addicted. In the end, Matthew stuffed the crumpled mana tobacco leaf into his mouth and chewed it carefully. In the next moment, a strong force surged out of his mouth. His eyes began to tear up, and thick black smoke came out of his nostrils. Cough, cough, cough. It was the first time Matthew had taken mana tobacco, and he choked. But after a brief discomfort, he could feel that his mana, which was gradually running out, had recovered a little. Phew. Matthew exhaled a long cloud of smoke. In the next moment, he chewed up all the tobacco leaves and swallowed them. Then, he continued to summon the dead souls tirelessly. A few seconds later. Hint, you have summoned and maintained more than 100 undead. During the summoning process, you have gained a new understanding of the undying domain. You have mastered a new ability, Withering Light. Withering Light, you can activate a gray light on your undead. Those who are enveloped by the gray light will continue to suffer the debuff of decreasing. Like and subscribe.